This meeting is being recorded.
Thank you, moderator. I see you started the recording.
I have.
Welcome back, everyone. Let me do a quick roll call to make sure we still have a quorum. Greg Lippy.
Here.
Jig Patel.
Here.
Ricardo Sanchez.
Here.
Debbie Veal.
Here.
Albert Wong.
Here.
Albert.
I'm here.
Albert. Great, thank you. So I apologize. I don't know if you can hear some commotion in the background.
Just a dog barking.
My landscapers decided to come mow the lawn, and the dogs are trying to protect me. Sorry about that. I've closed the door. Is it too disruptive? Should we take a few more minutes? Or? You're fine? Okay. All right.
It's fine. We
I
all
appreciate
have dogs.
So now we're all working from home.
Yep.
So we'll continue on our agenda. Item number 8. Discussion and consideration of discrepancies between state and federal controlled substances and its impact on healthcare services. Members, the meeting materials provide a history of the board's recent policy discussion on this issue, including prior legislative efforts. As discrepancies remain between the state and federal schedules, I believe it's appropriate for our committee to consider additional efforts that should be undertaken to synchronize or otherwise address these discrepancies. To assist us in the discussion today, the meeting materials detail some of the policy questions that may be helpful to guide us in our discussion. So those are listed on the next slide. Rather than discuss these issues one at a time, I'd open up the discussion for all these issues and any others all at once. These are just to help guide us in our discussions. For myself, my considerations are for questions number 1 and number 3. I believe the issue is pressing as for the 4 specific drugs identified in the chair report, and that's Fioricet, Donitol, Librex, and chlordiazepoxide. But we should do some ongoing evaluation should the federal schedule change for future drugs. So we're ready for member comment. Any comments? I haven't heard any member comments. I'd like to suggest a motion, if the members would agree and propose it, to recommend to the full board that California match the federal schedule for the identified 4 drugs that would require legislative authorization.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Any other discussion? I think we're ready for public comment.
This is the moderator. We have opened the Q&A panel for requests for public comment. If you'd like to make a comment, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen. Type "I would like to make a comment" into the Ask field and submit that to all panelists. We will pause for just a moment. We do have one request from Stephen Gray. Stephen, your line is open and you will have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to comment. CSHP, California Society of Health System Pharmacists, is concerned about the proposal for legislation in that it doesn't solve some of the problem and it may create others. let me give you an example. Under California law, as staff, I believe, knows and has been reported from AG's office before, the California Schedule of Controlled Substances has two purposes. It uses it for criminal penalty purposes, and it also uses it for healthcare practice purposes. And so there's been a resistance to making them the same without that clarification. And furthermore, that most of the computer systems in the country are programmed to only handle the federal controlled substance schedules. And I'm not talking just about the pharmacy and hospital computer systems, but the wholesaler computer systems and several other systems. Furthermore, there's a problem when you program it for a California scheduled controlled substance like Donatol or Fioricet, and then you report that to Cures, because Cures says that only the federal system applies. That's in the regulation adopted by the board a couple of years ago. So when you submit a prescription to Cures for Donatol or some other thing that is not federally controlled, you actually have a privacy violation, because you're not allowed to submit something that is not required by law to be submitted. So I think that this needs a little more study, and would suggest taking these comments I've made into consideration and a little more thought. And it may be as simple as basically saying that for criminal sentencing purposes, etc., the California schedule will apply, and for medical purposes of ordering, prescribing, and dispensing, the federal schedule will apply. Thank you for my opportunity to comment.
Hey, Steve, this is Debbie Veal. It seems like the examples you gave, our proposal would fix, like the wholesaler and
Agreed.
stuff like that.
Say that again. I'm sorry. I couldn't quite hear you, Debbie.
I said it seems like our proposal would fix your examples.
For these four
Well-
examples, this is the problem is that they are regulated more stringently in California. We're asking that it be regulated according to federal guidelines, which they're exempt.
Yeah, that's exactly right, and part of the problem, Dr. Sirpa. One of the things, for an example, they aren't always regulated more stringently in California. For an example, in California, we have medical marijuana and other things that are completely handled different than at the federal schedule level. Also, in California, buprenorphine is a Schedule 5. At the federal level, it's more restricted. So just going by this doesn't always solve the problem, and I believe you need to deal with it as what is the purpose of the schedule, and separate out the criminal proceedings purpose from the medical processing purpose, which is what pharmacies, hospitals, wholesalers, and everything have to go by. That's the essence of my comment.
Thank you. I think those are great comments for maybe a future agenda item, but the specific item here are for 4 specific
Right.
drugs that since we limited it to those 4 drugs because we didn't want to go into the larger issues of having disparate schedules or requiring changes to federal guidelines. So actually, this actually came up when one site reported that their computer system was following the federal guidelines, but California required them to override that and change it to Schedule 4. I guess I appreciate Dr. Gray's comments, but I'm not quite sure if it applies specifically to this amendment, or excuse me, motion.
And this is the moderator. That was our only request for comment. Would you like us to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, thank you. Board members, do you have any additional concerns or comments regarding these 4 drugs?
No.
I think
No.
we're ready
No.
for the vote. Thank you. Greg Lippy,
Yes.
Jig Patel,
Yes.
Ricardo Sanchez,
Yes.
Debbie Veal,
Yes.
Albert Wong.
Yes.
And I vote yes also. Motion passes. Moving on to agenda item 9, discussion and consideration of the FDA's final MOU on interstate distribution of compounded drug products. MOU is Memorandum of Understanding. Members, as included in the meeting materials from October 2020, the FDA finalized its draft MOU that establishes an agreement between respective state authority and the FDA regarding the distribution of inordinate amounts of compounded human drug products interstate, as well as investigation requirements for such states that enter into this MOU. Detailed in the chair report is information on the conditions of the agreement. I will not read everything that's in the chair report, but note that the agreement in general establishes provisions for investigation of complaints related to compounding human drug products distributed outside of California, defined and established by the recording requirements for distribution of inordinate amounts of such products, and mandates submission and disclosure of such information. This is a very complex issue, and I don't believe it can be resolved in one single committee meeting. I note that staff has identified some significant challenges to the MOU, and council has been evaluating it for legal issues. In the meeting minutes provided today, you'll note that 2 states have already decided not to enter into the MOU, and other jurisdictions, the issue is still under consideration. Before we consider some policy questions, I would like Ms. Smiley to provide the committee with her assessment of the legal issues surrounding the MOU. Ms. Smiley, are you available?
Yes, thank you. Still going through the MOU, but some of the bigger concerns I was trying to look at would be the confidentiality of the information that we would report either to the FDA or through this new website or information sharing network. At this point, I haven't identified any particular, diehard prohibition other than the fact that we cannot sign it now because we don't have the reporting mechanisms in place to comply with it. But the FDA has given, everybody 365 days, so we have until the end of October of 2021 to get any changes in place for us to be able to sign the MOU prior to them beginning to enforce the 5% limit on compounding pharmacies to distribute products out of state that don't sign the MOU. But I'm still going through the confidentiality portions of it. If you want me, I thought the committee materials did a good job of summarizing what the issues are, but at this point, I do agree with you, we can't sign it at this point because we don't have the ability to comply with it, just based on the information they would want us to report.
Thank you for your information. There certainly is a lot to consider, and I'm encouraging, or not encouraging, but I'm asking that you and the staff keep us informed as the situation changes and as you gain more information. Thank you. So I see the moderator has put some of the policy questions up just to assist us in our discussion. Board members, do you have any comments? Hearing no board member comments, let's open up for public comment.
This is the moderator. We have opened the Q&A panel for requests for public comment. If you'd like to make a public comment, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen, type "I would like to make a comment" into the ask field, and submit that to all panelists. Our first request for comment comes from Danny Martinez. Mr. Martinez, your line is open. You will have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Danny Martinez with the California Pharmacists Association. You'll notice as we sent in our letter to the board on this issue, we fully recognize that the board right now is put between the proverbial rock and a hard place. This is a very complicated situation, it has been mentioned, but one that's important nonetheless. We are, and our comments are fairly in line with what the meeting materials have pointed out, with the lone exception of we don't want the board to immediately sort of dismiss this or look at this as how big is a problem is this for us, but rather, more so to what do we need as a board in order to make this happen. Should you guys decide to sign the MOU, this is an important topic, and not signing the MOU right now is going to be a very detrimental, have a detrimental effect to not only our compounders but to patients who rely on these medications. Just because somebody is someone who's out of state, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't really care about them or their needs. And so, per our letter, we're asking you to really consider what in terms of staff and resources you would need in order to have this moving forward. And two, there's a question that's come up on whether the California board actually has a legal authority to enter independently of any other authority, or rather of any other agency. So I guess my question would be if Eileen would be able to answer that or provide some sort of information on that issue. Thank you.
And we're still analyzing that, Mr. Martinez. This is Eileen Smiley, but we have your comment in the letter about approaching the legislature. As you know, we have a process here in California where we would review. At this point, I don't see that. I don't see any diehard prohibition at this point, and we'll keep everybody apprised. At this point, we just can't sign it because we don't have the ability to comply with it.
Great, thank you. Our next request for comment comes from Rod Okamoto. Rod, your line is open. You will have 2 minutes.
Thank you. On behalf of Nutrishare and our 50 California-based pharmacists, technicians, and support staff, we ask that the California Board of Pharmacy please sign the FDA's MOU. By way of background, the typical generalist home infusion pharmacy services all sorts of home infusion therapies to self-administration patients within 100 miles or so of their homes, including IV antibiotics, chemotherapy, investigational drugs, and home TPN. It's what we do, home total parenteral nutrition. My background was a sterile lab director at UC Davis Medical Center ages ago. I founded Nutrishare in 1991 to focus exclusively in home TPN for patients located throughout the United States. The number of home TPN patients are relatively modest, 30 to 50,000, and the patients are scattered throughout the country. My goal was to provide an additional level of care and outcomes for these patients, no matter where they were through the United States. By focusing on this single therapy, we have been able to form a national board-certified team of clinicians located throughout the country who hold daily rounds to clinically monitor our patients. This team is composed of pharmacists, dietitians, and nurses. Our research and product improvements are all focused on the needs of the home TPN patients. This is all we do, home TPN for patients wherever you are in the United States. And we ship out of Sacramento, California, Elk Grove, to be exact. This has led to improved clinical outcomes such as reduced catheter complications, reducing sepsis, optimally monitoring fluid, electrolyte, and nutritional health, and improved quality of life for our patients and their caregivers. We improve quality of life for our family of consumers, again, sometimes located in states where the Nutrishare level of expertise is lacking
10 seconds.
By the generalist home infusion pharmacies. Nutrishare also holds national and regional education and patient-to-patient support group events for our family of consumers over the past 30 years. Obviously, our entire 30-year history has been predicated on shipping our sterile compounds out of state to patients in their homes for their specialized clinical and life quality
Time
of
has
life
expired.
support. Should I stop? Can I?
Yes, that's the end of your 2 minutes. Sorry, Dr. Okamoto, but I think we have your letter and your information. I appreciate that.
Our next request for comment comes from Gibran Maciel. I apologize if I've mispronounced your name. Your line is open. You will have 2 minutes.
That was perfect. My name is Gibran Maciel. I'm also with Nutrishare. And just to quickly expand on our president's comments, Nutrishare is a home and specialty home infusion pharmacy, and we specialize in providing parenteral nutrition for a family of long-term stable consumers who are unable to absorb the nutrients orally. And just as a quick aside, we do like to say consumers and not patients to reflect the fact that our family of consumers lead really enriching lives. They're able, prior to COVID, they were able to travel. We would meet them with their itinerary at wherever they needed to go, and we take every step possible to ensure the best quality of life for our family of consumers. When you consider this MOU, I would ask you to consider the impacts to consumers in rural areas and areas without specialized service, such as one consumer that we have that lives in Alaska, and there is literally no local service option for him. We have another consumer who had a life goal to have a baby, and together we created a plan to have her gain the appropriate amount of weight and get her there. Okay, so this is a highly specialized medical intervention where local options are not always available in rural communities or to patients or consumers with very specific needs. I'll ask the committee to consider supplemental material items number 4, which is a compendium of 200, I think close to 200 letters from parenteral nutrition consumers, not just with Nutrishare, but throughout the country, who rely on this highly specialized medication to sustain their lives. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next request for, our next request for comment comes from Richard Long. And Richard, your line is open. You will have 2 minutes.
All right. Yes, I'm a pharmacist, operations manager with Nutrishare here in Elk Grove, California. And just to expand on a little of what mentioned, Nutrishare as a company we've been actively working with the FDA over the past decade or so in the many versions of the MOU to the version we're at now. We're just trying to make this easier to where we don't want it to, basically a negative impact would be a restriction to our consumers' choices as to a provider. We are a national company, you could say, where we ship across state lines. A lot of physicians, organizations, clinics throughout the United States know who we are. And it'll be it'll be a shame if they cannot, our consumers don't have choices to have Nutrishare to continue to provide our specialty product to them, or now or in the future. Case in point is like in Alaska, we got a call from a doctor's office calling us because they have no local providers there that could provide parental nutrition to one of their patients. What do? They called us. So we're able to provide the necessary care and also the necessary sterile compounded products to our patient up in Alaska. Without, with the MOU, if it's not going to be signed, it would negatively impact our business and at the same time, the choice of our consumers and our consumers' care. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next request for comment comes from Christy Poindexter. Christy, your line is open. You will have 2 minutes.
Hello, my name's Christy Poindexter. I've been on TPN, home infusion, for 33 years, since I was 8 years old. It's kept me alive this long. I'm 41, never thought I would live this long, but it's, a miracle. I just wanted to speak on behalf of the TPN consumers all around the country and the United States, because I am connected with a lot of them, or I should say the United States. Basically, I was with another pharmacy for many years, 30 years. I was not able to travel outside of California because they did not have the right licensing or whatever. Anyways, I joined with some of the other speakers from Nutrishare. I joined with them about 2 years ago, And since then, my life completely has changed in a lot of good ways. The first year I was with them, I got to travel to outside of California on airplane for my first time, and they shipped everything to my location, which made it so easy versus me having to bring all my TPN supplies, medications through airport security, get it loaded on the airplane. So these are just some things that impact us consumers by not having the MOU in place. So I'm just asking you guys to, really consider it. It definitely would be harder for the consumers out there to get the care that we need. So thank you.
Thank you for sharing your experience. I appreciate that.
And that was our last request for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, thank you.
It is closed.
So members, as I stated at the beginning of this agenda item, I think there's a lot to consider, and I think that we will be continuing to get additional information over the next few meetings and be able to come to some sort of agreement or consensus or resolution, maybe it's a better word, before the October 2021 deadline.
When do you think we're going to find, Eileen, when do you think we're going to find out if we're going to be able to comply?
That would require changes. I think Anne was talking, because just to get the information that we would have to be able to report to the FDA would require changes, because we don't currently get that information for the compounding pharmacies. So I don't know, Anne, was the staff starting to look at if the board wanted to move forward with this, about whether you were going to do it via statutory change or a reg?
This is Anne. Yeah, so I would say that the NABP is working on development and testing of an information sharing provision. I would say that at the staff level, there are some challenges, but they're not, it's not insurmountable. So we're really looking for where the board would like to go, and then we will figure out the best course. Depending on the solutions, should the board decide it's appropriate to enter into the MOU, there will be some resource constraints, and we will probably be recommending at the staff level that some of these reporting obligations actually get pushed to the licensees that are actually performing the compounding to the information sharing system. It's my understanding that the NABP, as part of their deployment of the system, was envisioning actually the compounding pharmacies doing a lot of the reporting. Whether or not we can mandate that just under the MOU, I believe we would probably need to have some sort of regulation to require it. But given the size of California and the potential impact on resource, I believe that we would probably need to be creating some sort of mandates either through statute or regulation.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. I just wanted to state that the board is aware that there are some real time constraints here, and so this will be a very important topic at our next meeting, where we'll need to have some more decision-making opportunities, I'm hoping, by our next board or by our next committee meeting. Next item on the agenda.
I'm sorry, Maria, may I ask a quick question? I apologize. This is Anne again. Would it be helpful to the committee to see if NABP would be available to give a presentation if their system is operational at the time, by the next meeting, to give a quick presentation about the network and how it works?
I think that would be very helpful. That would help us to determine how to operationalize this difficult place that we are in.
Agreed.
Thank you, Anne. Our next item on the agenda is number 10. Discussion and consideration of FDA guidance document, Insanitary Conditions of Compounding Facilities, Guidance for the Industry. Members, this agenda item is intended for education. We discussed this issue in depth during the October committee meeting, and you'll see a summary of that discussion and information received by the board regarding California pharmacies in the minutes we just approved during this meeting. Under the FDA Act, or I'm sorry, I should say that correctly, the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, a drug is deemed to be adulterated if it's been prepared, packed, or held under insanitary conditions. Provided in Attachment 6, and members, if you could, wanted to pull up Attachment 6, there's a copy of the specific guidance document that we're referencing. As indicated in the document, the FDA encourages states to take appropriate action and to contact the FDA when such an agency identifies a compounding facility that is engaged in poor practices where insanitary conditions are identified. Before we start with comments, I wanted to see if Council has any additional information regarding the applicability of the guidance document in California. I think that's also Ms. Smiley.
No, I didn't have anything further to say or to provide.
Okay, and the staff, or do you have any other comments to add before we start with member questions?
I do not. Thank you.
Okay. Members, any comments or questions?
No.
Okay, since this is information, we will not be having a vote, so we can go ahead and go to public comments.
This is the moderator. We have opened the Q&A panel for requests for public comment. If you'd like to make a comment, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen. Type "I would like to make a comment" in the Ask field and submit that to all panelists. We will pause for a brief moment. We have a request for comment from Rod Okamoto. Rod, your line is open and you will have 2 minutes.
Thanks, guys. I won't I'll overrun my time this time, but I happen to be on the previous item call. But my comment on this is that, you know, over the years, I started my first home infusion pharmacy in 1979, and over the years, in the early days, you know, we just made our decisions based on the art of pharmacy. We look up the drug and make our decision on whether that could be infused, whether drug incompatibilities, et cetera. You know, over the years, we started becoming accredited by JCO or ACHC. The boards of pharmacies in all the states started having their own sterile compounding sections. As you know, California has a specific credential for that. And the FDA, now the FDA started their insanitary condition inspections, and we were inspected by them. You know, that inspection could take 2 weeks. And I think really they're doing that just as a way they're using that as a way to monitor, to kind of redo everything we do, from the California standards to the accreditation standards, and everything's been elevated to the extent of the bureaucracy. It's pretty ridiculous at this point. But, you know, we passed that. But, you know, the consequences, we got 2, not citations, but notations, and we were able to correct them. But those, anytime they come in and they look up and down through the organization, and it's really intrusive, I think, in my opinion. So, but like I said, I think we're well organized on the bureaucracy we have to go through already, just with the accreditations and the boards of pharmacy regulations and standards, and sometimes additional sterile compounding requirements by the states. But that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next request for comment comes from Jill Robinson. Jill, your line is open. You will have 2 minutes.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm commenting about
Just to
injections.
clarify, Jill, I think your comments are about the next agenda item.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I'm so sorry.
This one is about the guidance document from the FDA. Do you have any
Oh, I'm
comments?
sorry. Okay.
Oh, that's not a problem.
I will put her on our list for the next item. We have a request for comment from Grace Gardner. Grace, your line is open. You will have 2 minutes.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, excellent. Thank you so much for allowing me to make some comments in favor of allowing 503A pharmacies to develop B12 methylated liquid.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Miss or Dr. Gardner. That's the next agenda item. We're currently on agenda item 10.
Okay, I'm so sorry. Thank you.
No problem. I'm sorry for the confusion. It sounds like maybe members of the audience are confused. We're on agenda item 10. Number 11, I know, is going to have a lot of comments.
Great.
Thank you for putting that up.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt you.
All right, and let's try Danny Martinez. Danny, your line is open. You will have 2 minutes.
Thank you. And yes, I will be commenting on the guidance document. I guess as I was reading through the guidance document and I really have questions as to why or where, and understanding that the FDA does in fact see these conditions present in compounding pharmacies. I guess I don't read anywhere in here if there was specific compounding pharmacies where this was occurring, in which states, or if all this is occurring in a few pharmacies. I guess my hope is that the board is not taking this guidance document as a representation of how compounding pharmacies occur on the norm. And I'm certainly not implying that that's how you're taking it, but I wanted to bring home that point because while the guidance document does include the correct guidance as to how you address compounding pharmacies where there is this sort of insanitary conditions, I just want to make sure that you guys are not taking that to mean that this is the norm. So just wanted to make that comment.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez, for your comments. And correct me if I'm wrong, board staff, but my understanding is that when the FDA finds issues with pharmacies within California, they do report them to the board for further investigation. And that has happened in the past.
That is correct.
We have another request for comment from Ron Mcguff. Ron, this is the moderator. Just to confirm, you are commenting on item number 10, correct?
I am commenting on insanitary conditions and pharmaceutical grade raw materials.
Okay, thank you. You're aligned. You will have 2 minutes.
All right, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak. I am Ron Mcguff, president of Mcguff Pharmaceuticals. I'd like to present information on USP chapters that discuss quality tests for injectables and compliance to pharmaceutical grade raw material. Excuse me, when the FDA issued that warning that is part of this committee review, the term pharmaceutical grade raw material did not exist, and we cannot find anywhere where there's a definition of pharmaceutical grade raw material. However, we believe that there's ample chapters in the USP which define what is required to produce and identify a bulk drug substance to be pharmaceutical grade. Examples are, and this is all from the USP, USP Chapter 1, Product Quality Tests for Injections. USP Chapter 232, Elemental Impurities, Limits. USP 467, Residual Solvents. USP 85, it's bacterial endotoxins. I'd like to suggest to the board that this is a way to define what pharmaceutical ingredient or grade actually means. Reading from chapter 1 itself, just the chapter titles: Introduction, Product Quality Tests Common to Parenteral Dosage Forms, Universal Tests, Specific Tests, Product Quality Tests for Specific Parenteral Dosage Forms, solutions, sterile powders and solutions, suspensions, liposomes, sterile powders and suspensions, emulsions, implants, drug eluting stents. There is quite a bit of information there that's provided by the USP. The USP is a very important document, 2 paragraphs here. The USP does not differentiate what type of entity a FDA-reviewed outsourcing facility, an FDA-reviewed manufacturer, or a 503A compounding pharmacy can use this document. All USP requirements can be met by 503A pharmacies.
Time has expired. At this time, that is our last request for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, thank you. Thank everyone for their comments. Just as a reminder, there's no action on this informational item. We're going to move on to agenda item 11. Discussion and consideration of compounding of methylcobalamin. Members, this next issue is again a very complicated one. As included in the chair's report, this specific chemical has been discussed in detail at previous compounding committee meetings where we discussed USP standards and impacts to board compounding regulations. During those meetings, the board has consistently pointed patients to access this product from a 503A resource authorized to compound methylcobalamin. Attachment 7, if you have a chance to pull up attachment 7, has FDA policy statements on 503A and 503B compounding. Also included is an example of an FDA 483 report, which documents citation of a facility using non-pharmaceutical grade methylcobalamin. So that was an FDA inspection report, and it's just an example of what the concept is being looked at by the FDA. For a 503A compounding facility under current good manufacturing practices and regulated by the FDA, there are steps and documentation to assure the safety of bulk drug substances. This is more difficult in a 503B facility or pharmacy. I believe it's appropriate to note that other provisions must also be considered, specifically the compounding of methylcobalamin, including the conditions described as constituting insanitary conditions, which we discussed in the prior agenda item. The meeting materials lay out several items for us to consider as we discuss this topic, and thank you for projecting the items from the meeting materials. I believe these are important factors, so let's review them, and rather than going one at a time, I would open the discussion all at once, so this will help us to guide our discussions. This is a very complex topic, so I wanted to make sure I do this correctly here. As indicated at the beginning of the agenda item, this is very complicated and has significant patient implications. In the past, we have received very passionate comments about supply concerns from patients currently using methylcobalamin. I also note that the supplemental materials were distributed on this item. At this time, I believe that there is one solution for patients requiring methylcobalamin is to obtain it from an outsourcing 503A facility. The FDA's position on the issue appears clear from the public information it has released, including 483 reports. While from a patient's perspective, we need to balance product access with product safety. One of the primary challenges experienced by some compounding facilities is the lack of pharmaceutical grade methylcobalamin. Inappropriately graded materials that contain lead, arsenic, or other compounds can create a risk to patients when used in sterile products. Long term, I think we all agree, it would be beneficial for one or more manufacturers to either produce pharmaceutical grade bulk products or to seek approval from the FDA. Increased access to a safe product is important. In the meantime, I believe it may be appropriate to 503A facilities that have these increased standards and measures of quality requiring the FDA and good manufacturing practices to provide this to patients. While the board does not want to be a barrier to patients obtaining required medications, we want to make sure the medications are safe. Members, do you have any comments or questions, either from past discussions or meeting materials?
This is Anne.
This is Debbie. Go ahead, Anne.
Sorry, just to quickly clarify, a 503A is a pharmacy and a 503B is an outsourcer. I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you. I must have probably said it incorrectly several times in my typo here. I apologize for that. Thank you, Anne.
So, Maria, it's 503B that you're recommending should produce these. Is that correct?
So
the outsourcers?
The outsourcers, the ones that are regulated by the FDA.
Okay. I mean, you know, I'll say up front, I am not a compounding pharmacist, but it seems like, you know, there's two things we have to take into consideration here. The number one is, you know, what's the best thing for the public, and the public is, you know, we need to make sure that we're giving them, that they are receiving, you know, high quality product. And so I think that's why we're saying the outsourcers who, you know, go by general manufacturing procedures. I guess, and I know that I know in the past we've heard testimony from people saying, well, if you do that, then I don't have access. And so I guess I want to understand why. I would think that there'd be enough outsourcing opportunities that it wouldn't limit it. I understand that compounding pharmacies, this might be something that they do, but if their supply is not safe for the consumers in the state of California, that makes me concerned. So those are my comments.
Did you have a question in there too, Debbie, that you wanted Anne or maybe Christina Costa to reply to?
Buried in there somewhere.
Well, I just wanted to make sure I wasn't cutting you off because you made some good comments and I wasn't quite sure if there's a question in there or you're just stating a concern.
Yeah, I was kind of trying to state my thoughts of why and I think I'm aligning with kind of where you are coming from and what you were saying. But I guess, you know, Christina, because you do see the compounding pharmacies, you know, have we seen some issues of the 503A or the pharmacies in California producing this product where we have concerns that we really want, you know, the public to be using those products?
And I'm not sure if she's promoted up to speak. There she is.
Christine, I have promoted you to a panelist.
Christina, did you get my question?
I did. Sorry, I had to unmute myself on my phone and my computer. I did miss you. So what we are seeing is the raw material is either what we are considering ungraded because it doesn't tell us what it's actually to be used for, or in most cases, it's meeting a USP dietary grade monograph. And a lot of the times on the certificate of analysis, it's showing us a decent amount of CFUs. The average is about 50 CFUs per gram prior to compounding. And then there's also additive things in there. So there's arsenic in some of them. There's heavy metals such as lead, things that we typically would not see in a drug product. So you wouldn't expect to get, I don't know, like a morphine and have trace elements of lead or something to that capacity. So we are seeing that coming from 503As exclusively.
So, and why can 503As not get pharmaceutical grade methylcobalamin?
I am not aware of any product that is shipped into the United States that is labeled as injectable grade or pharmaceutical grade. There is not even a USP monograph for a drug grade methylcobalamin. This is a very deep-seated issue. So the people that are making it, I'm not sure what grade they're actually using, but the benefit of getting at a B or an outsourcing facility is they have the ability to run those tests. Mr. Mcguff just went through the USP test that can be ran on a raw material. That is something that's required on a 503B. It's part of their good manufacturing practices. When they're an A, they have to take whatever quality comes in and then they use that. An A doesn't have the ability to kind of think outside the box the way that an outsourcing facility gets to. If that
So
makes
if
sense.
it's so yeah, I get it. But so if that's all that's coming into the United States, I mean, that almost implies that the outsourcers or 503B are getting the same thing.
They may be, but when they run these tests, they have the ability to throw out raw materials that don't meet the specifications that they're looking for. Under
Okay,
they don't test and they don't know.
So they can test for it, and then their facilities can remove the arsenic and whatever else out of the raw material before they start making the methylcobalamin. Is that right?
No, they just wouldn't use the bulk ingredient that didn't test into the specifications that they want. So let's just say they can only have X amount of whatever. We'll just say arsenic because I brought that up, right? And they would test it, and then that specification would go above what their limit was, and they would say, nope, this raw material is not accepted. We won't use it. It's quarantined and leaves the facility. So there's a stopgap before something is even made at the B level, but not at the A level.
So 503A could be getting the same good stuff, just that they don't have the ability to know whether the stuff they're getting is good or bad.
And it's not even that they don't have the ability, because there are some very sophisticated pharmacies that may be able to test for it. It's just there's nothing in the law that will allow them to review their bulk ingredients, if that makes sense. So when you look at whether you can use a bulk ingredient under A, our law basically just says you have to use this grade, and it has to come from an FDA registered drug establishment, right? It doesn't say, well, if it's not this grade, then go ahead and test it and make sure that it is. There's no ability for an A to test the raw material so they know it's appropriate grade. That's a level of manufacturing, a level that pharmacies were never expected to have.
Okay.
So they could, absolutely, but they would never know. But then they also don't know when they get the really bad stuff either, because there's no requirement to test any of it. And I know what they're all going to say. They're going to say, well, we're testing it for sterility and endotoxins. But you know what? Those are not the only things in there that are not appropriate. And a sterility test is not a guarantee of sterility. It's only sterility assurance. And when you filter sterilize something, it fails 1 in 1,000 vials.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. We're still in member comment or questions.
You know, is there some kind of a shortage of the appropriate manufactured methylcobalamin? Does anybody know?
There is no FDA-approved methylcobalamin product at all. And as far as the raw material or the bulk, I've never seen it. So to me, we have to drive the market to get an appropriate product. I do believe that it could be available, but I've never seen anybody use it.
Okay, but the ones that are the outsourced manufactured ones, That's just specifically for a patient or not?
So the outsourced facilities that ship into California or in California do not have the ability currently to do a patient-specific prescription. But a pharmacy, any pharmacy, can purchase from an outsourced facility and then dispense in their pharmacy the outsourcing facility product. So it should not limit anything. It's still available. An outsourcing facility that can ship into California can sell it to any licensed pharmacy into the state of California. That pharmacy can then dispense to their patient.
Okay, so that goes back to my original question, or maybe I didn't state it right. But is there a shortage so that a pharmacy here could not get it if they need it from one of the outsourced facilities?
Not that I am aware of, no.
Okay, thank you.
Greg, this is Anne. I would say that might be kind of a hard question to answer as well, because I think that right now a lot of the marketplace with respect to the product is from compounding pharmacies as opposed to outsourcers. But as both Maria indicated and Christine, I think that long term, I think that patients would be very well served if there was some sort of opportunity to be advocating for an appropriately graded raw material moving forward. Really, that's really one of the long-term solutions, I believe.
Okay.
So our law today, basically, if we do nothing, our law today would say that our compounding pharmacies, the 503As in California, because of the grade of bulk material, they should not be compounding this product, and that people should today only be obtaining it from 503B or outsourcing facilities. Is that correct?
I think that's a difficult answer, and so let me try, because I'm not an employee of the board, so they can correct me. But the way I understood it, because I asked a similar question, is our current process is that inspectors and staff are focusing on educating licensees on what is appropriate and not appropriate, and they are exercising enforcement discretion. So it's not an automatic citation or discipline at all. The focus is on education so that patients have safe product.
But I guess, I guess I'm not even sure I was asking about the follow through. I'm just asking, just kind of at the base level, it sounds like our law, if the pharmacies can't get the bulk product at the grade that our law says it has to be, then they shouldn't be compounding it, and it should be coming from the outsourcers, right?
So probably that's a question probably best for counsel. But I would say that it's, I don't know, Debbie, not trying to be unhelpful here, but I don't know that it's as easy as a yes or no, because it's not just, it's not just our regulations, it's federal law, it's even like the guidance document that we just spoke about, right? Where one of the examples of insanitary conditions is using an inappropriately graded product, right? So it's a really complicated issue, and I know that CPHA asked for this to be on the agenda, and I think I don't want to speak for them, but I think part of it is to it's complicated, and I think that we probably, we've spoken with the FDA about this in general. The FDA has made public statements about this, but, we're at the staff level would be happy to engage the FDA more, as well as, NABP or other people that do surveys in this space. I certainly don't want to put you on the spot, but I think that it's not quite just as simple as what our regulations do or do not provide.
I would agree with that, and I think some of the stakeholders also submitted some letters just talking about the complexity in the law, and part of it is also with what the FDA has been doing with issuing some of its findings. So I don't think it's entirely clear. I'd say it's somewhat, one could argue that it's ambiguous, but given the product safety potential for the clients, there is definite concern, I think, at different points for different inspections, whether it should be being compounded, but balancing against that with the access for some of the medical needs that this compounded drug is used for. So I think I wanted to look at what the stakeholders said, because we got some of those letters yesterday, and I think maybe engaging FDA staff too for its interpretation around here, because sometimes it really truly is a balancing act between safety and access, and in this case, I think ideally the best idea would be to move towards a pharmaceutical grade bulk substance, and maybe there's a way that we could help steer the market that way, or at least California is big enough maybe to do that. But I'd also like to hear from the stakeholders, some of whom submitted letters on this point yesterday.
Thank you, Ms. Smiley. Any other board comments before we go to public comment? Okay, I think we're ready for public comment. Thank you.
This is the moderator. We have opened the Q&A panel for public comment. If you'd like to make a comment, please click on the Q&A icon on the screen, type "I would like to make a comment" into the ask field, and then submit that to all panelists. Our first request for comment comes from Danny Martinez. Danny, your line is open. You'll have 2 minutes.
Thank you. As noted in our letter to the board, this is obviously a very concerning problem. I'm going to throw out some statistics that we were able to find. As of this morning, there are 898 active sterile compounding licenses in California, 838 of which are actually in state. As opposed to outsourcing facilities, which currently the board is licensing 29 outsourcing facilities, 4 of which are in California, and none of which actually currently manufacture methylcobalamin for this purpose. So there, to the access issue, there's an immediate access issue where potentially 838 facilities, some of which are currently doing this, that will whittle its way all the way down to potentially, at best, 29. So that's issue number one. Issue number two, to the comment that about the quality of the tests, the repackagers currently do the CGMP standard tests for quality on those products when they sell them to pharmacies. So that testing has already occurred by the time the pharmacies actually get those raw ingredients. And then additionally, as you know, the comment that was made that, well, 503B facilities can just sell them to pharmacies. Actually, they cannot. And that is per federal law. They have to have a label that says labeled not for resale use. And that is under the Drug Quality and Security Act. So that is currently not the case. And I know you're going to hear a lot of comments from patients, from physicians, and from other pharmacists on this. I would really, really, really encourage you to please stop this de facto ban on something that the FDA has made quite clear is in fact allowed, and to please consider the potential impacts that would otherwise happen. Thank you.
Danny, before you leave.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Debbie, but I have a question for Danny too. So stay on, Dan.
So you go.
Yes.
Okay, so my question is, you just said de facto ban, but
yes.
I thought that we were just talking about. I mean, are we really banning it?
Well,
it sounds like we're not really banning it yet.
Yes. Well, in essence, that's why I'm describing it as de facto ban. Per Ms. Acosta's comments, she has made the comment that there is no pharmaceutical grade methylcobalamin being shipped into California. That is false. We are aware of facilities that do so. So by making the statement that there are no such pharmaceutical grade methylcobalamin being shipped in California, that means that the board staff is now enforcing pretty much anyone who's compounding methylcobalamin in a 503A facility. So yes, we would describe that as a de facto ban.
Well, just to clarify that, I think what she said, there was no pharmaceutical grade bulk substance. So that's different than what your comments are.
Well, again, we are aware of facilities that are shipping the appropriate grade, and this is the other thing I want to mention that's in our letter. We do in fact agree that with the board and with the FDA that dietary supplement grade products are not suitable for sterile compounding. That is something we can agree on. But we are aware of facilities that have the appropriate grade methylcobalamin that can and are being used right now somehow this is not a problem in 49 other states, because we've called around and asked, is there any other board that's taken this kind of action? And to our research, there is none, because none of this is a problem.
And to clarify, we haven't taken any action. We're just providing education.
Right. No, I understand. I apologize.
But so wait a minute. So can I just do one more question, Maria, and then I promise I'll let you ask the question. But so if these pharmacies have the appropriate grade of drug, then is there a problem?
Under our understanding, there shouldn't be. And what we're saying is that there currently are. We are aware of pharmacies that are being issued either correction orders, citation, or possible disciplinary action for the action of compounding methylcobalamin.
And during that, the inspector was informed and educated that the methylcobalamin that was being used by that pharmacy was actually the appropriate grade.
To my understanding, that is correct.
Okay. All right,
So,
Maria, yours.
Yeah, it is difficult when you when we talk about unsubstantiated current or past investigations, and so it's hard to really validate that. But Danny, my specific question was to your comment that 503B facilities cannot ship product to another pharmacy. I'm curious about how you state that and why you state that, because I see that happening every day.
So they're not, I'm looking at the text of the Compounding Quality Act. This is section 102, I'm sorry, 503B under, and I can certainly email this thing that I'm looking at.
I think there's some confusion, because that's normal pharmacy practice. Is hundreds of pharmacies across California obtain products from 503B outsourcers.
But what I'm saying is that here it says under labeling of drugs, which is A10 subsection 9, it must include the statement not for resale, and if the drug is dispensed or distributed other than pursuant to a prescription for an individual identified patient, the statement office use only. In California, there's a current ban on patient-specific prescriptions by 503B.
So I think you're misstating the facts there, but that's just my opinion because of what I see. So I'm not quite sure if we should just let this go or if Christine wants to comment on that.
This is Anne. Would you like me to go ahead? This is Anne, and I would suggest that staff is happy to work with council offline to confirm the state of affairs with respect to outsourcing facilities distributing in California.
Great,
may I ask a question follow up to Mr. Martinez?
Sure, please do.
Of the 889 active compounding pharmacies, how many of those are compounding methylcobalamin?
I don't know. I looked up the statistics on your website under license search. What I'm saying is that those 898 active sterile licensed pharmacies have the ability to do so. How many are doing them? I don't know.
Okay, thank you, Danny.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're ready to continue with public comment.
Okay, our next request for comment comes from Jacqueline Van Ness. Jacqueline, I see you logged in twice. I'm going to unmute both lines. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hold on. I need to unlog.
And moderator, while she's doing that, I just wanted to remind you of the other individuals, Jill Robinson, and there was somebody else who was.
Yes. I have a list of 4 individuals that requested earlier that I will, if they don't submit another request, I'll pick them up at the end.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Jacqueline, your line is unmuted. Let's try this again.
Yes, you can hear me better now, correct?
Perfect. We can. Thank you. You'll have 2 minutes.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Let me introduce myself. I'm a parent of a son that has been taking methylcobalamin B12 injectables for over 8 years now. This is a prescription from his doctor, and it is primarily to help him with his anxiety, OCD, and some mild depression. We have seen very amazing results with him staying on methylcobalamin. However, in December, we were told by our pharmacist that he can no longer produce this because of what is being discussed today. So he shut down making methylcobalamin. In the time that my son has been taking this, we have gone from many pharmacies, actually. We started in Colorado, we were in Alabama, in New York, and then in San Diego, and then we ended up locally, which is Salinas, California, for us. And every pharmacy that we had to leave, the reason was because of regulations being put in place, and that they shut down, or the answer was we can no longer supply to a patient that lives in California because of state regulations. So at this point, we are completely out of methylcobalamin. And what was brought up earlier about safety, I totally understand. I mean, I would be behind that 100%. Of course, I want nothing in the methylcobalamin that would harm my son. But in the 8 years, I have never found anything. He's been tested for lead and for arsenic and for other elements. So we have not found a safety risk at all personally in our situation. What I'm concerned about as a parent is that he's in danger to possibly have neuropsychiatric deteriorations, which we started out with. He was severely mentally ill, and he's now a very functioning a young adult. He attends community college, is on the president's list, and I am very concerned about his health and his future. And I really encourage you to look into this deeply. That this ingredient needs to be made available to patients, and at the level where it's cost effective. I pay $140 a month for this ingredient just to have him have it. So also consider, what is it going to cost if you push this to 503Bs and then they have to sell to 503As, and what's it going to cost to the patient? I appreciate and thank you for the opportunity to make a comment.
Thank you for sharing your personal experience. I appreciate that.
Our next request for comment comes from Rachel Israel. Rachel, your line is open. You will have 2 minutes.
Hello, thank you. My name is Rachel Israel. My family owns a compounding pharmacy in Cleveland, but we're licensed in 45 states, including in California. I'm general counsel for the pharmacy, and my compliance officer is also on the line today. It is critical that the board not pursue any action to limit the ability of 503A pharmacies to compound sterile methylcobalamin injections. And there's a couple of reasons. One, we've heard a lot about theoretical possibilities of this bulk drug being impure or contaminated, but we know from our actual data that it is not. For example, we do sterility and endotoxin test results or testing on every single batch of sterile medication before it is sent to California. We're in compliance with all California laws. And to clarify, based on one of the board members' earlier questions, yes, there is a legal way under current California law to meet all of the sterility and lack of contamination requirements required for sterile methylcobalamin already. And we do that by a number of processes that are required by California law. We have environmental control, temperature control, sterile testing, quarantining products. And also, I know that Ms. Acosta also mentioned heavy metals, and that's been mentioned by a couple of people. We have done the math, And for any patient that is taking the actual methylcobalamin product, where we have a certificate of analysis that tells us exactly what is in there because the testing is done before it comes to us, we are at 0.00028%. I mean, a tiny, tiny fraction of the percent of the daily limit for any person set by FDA for lead, and just slightly more than that, and significantly less than that for arsenic. There's no cadmium, there's no mercury. This bulk product is tested, and we do know that it's safe. And we have to talk, when we talk about access, you have to understand the cost. That's the parent that just spoke addressed this. We would not be able to supply an affordable product to our patients in California if we cannot use the product that we are, which is already tested. It would be cost prohibitive, and our suppliers have told us.
Thank you for your comments.
Our next request for comment comes from Dr. Jeffrey Becker. Dr. Becker, your line is open. You will have 2 minutes.
Okay, great. Yeah, appreciate the board's efforts in terms of keeping us safe, but I do want to comment. I've been using methylcobalamin in medical practice in functional psychiatry for about 15 years. It's been astoundingly effective in many cases, and I think it's very important for everybody to understand that functional B12 deficiencies and the science behind this has advanced to a point where we understand that many patients need pharmaceutical dosing of B12 to achieve the effects you're looking for, to push through the blood-brain barrier, to get brain levels that can actually restore function. Schizophrenia has been shown to have 8-fold reductions in B12 in brain tissue in postmortem studies, as well for autism. And the problem that we're looking at here is that if we were to shift away from the current model without being careful, the costs would become prohibitive. They already are right on the edge of inaccessible with patients, and they need to be able to dose at home. I have patients where if they don't get their B12 as a daily shot, they actually become non-functional. This might be hard to actually believe if you're not in medical, not kind of steeped in the medical science behind this, but there are many, many factors behind methylcobalamin that make it absolutely essential for human beings, certain human beings. And we know a lot about this now based on the genetics that are coming back with methionine synthase reductase, functional SNPs that don't work very well for reducing cobalamin electron valence back to activity after it becomes oxidized. It's an essential medicine, and it has to be able to be dosed at home. My understanding is that the 503B, when I have tried to work in this field, basically I have walked away from that because all of the labels say that this is a compounded drug for office use only, not for resale, and that puts us into a bind where we can't let the patients deliver the B12 at home.
Thank you for your informed comments. I do appreciate that.
Our next request for comment comes from SciFam. I apologize if I have misspoken your name. Your line is open, and you will have 2 minutes.
Yes, thank you. This is CFAM with Mcguff Compounding Pharmacy. I'd just like to make some really quick points. It's been noted that there's a lack of sterile grade or pharmaceutical grade bulk drug substance for methylcobalamin. In fact, there's no definition of what sterile grade or a pharmaceutical grade is. But there are ways in which we can screen incoming material for the elemental impurity of concern that the board has already brought up. These tools are not unique to the 503B's facility, the outsourcer. The 503A pharmacy can do the same. It's just a matter of contracting the right lab to do it. So we can actually ask for samples, test those samples even before we begin compounding to understand that the levels of impurities are appropriate. My second point is that California Compounding Pharmacy have been making methylcobalamin injections for over 20 years with really great success and very limited reports of any side effects. So the answer to the board concern is to work with compounding pharmacy, define the standards in which we can screen the incoming material to be used. If 503Bs are to take over compounding methylcobalamin, their CGMP standards will increase the cost of any injection that they compound. That's just simply economics for running a full CGMP operation that would then be passed along to pharmacies and eventually to patients who will not be able to afford it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Maria, I have a question. I don't know if it's for the last speaker or just in general, but it sounds like this methylcobalamin has been used for years, and the pharmacies have been compounding it for years. What brought rise to this? Has there been like a recent change in the bulk supply? Is it just awareness that there's been issues? It sounds like there hasn't been a problem. So I just want to make sure that we're not creating much to do about a situation where there isn't a problem. So I mean, has there been a change in the bulk supply? Has there been a problem? What caused this all to come up?
It is somewhat complex. I can tell you how I understand it, and Anne and Christine, feel free to chime in if you have additional information or to correct me. But when I asked the question, it seems like I'm not sure how long this has been compounded or available or used. Excuse me. But when I asked the question, it appears that the FDA has been, it has risen on their radar, and they've offered 483 reports during their GCMP inspections of compounders across the country. And so it's risen to a level of concern. And whenever they write a 483 on a compounding pharmacy, they send that information to that state board of pharmacy. And so that's how it's become something that we've started to discuss. And I just, to remind everyone, we haven't taken any action. At this point, it's still items for discussion, an opportunity for education and discussion with inspectors and licensees. So that's my understanding of how it came to our attention. Anne or Christine?
Thank you.
Do you have something else to add?
I would just say that I think that, this is Anne, sorry, that yes, the FDA is, in this space. The issue of the appropriate grading of material is not, I don't know that it's necessarily new, Debbie. Even a few years ago with the glutathione, the FDA was issuing alerts and talking about the importance of using the appropriately graded product. And then more recently, the guidance on the insanitary conditions. I think that we're very mindful of the potential benefits as well as the potential risks. But with the committees and indulgence, I think that staff, working with council a little bit more, but then I think also following up with CPHA to get a little bit more information about the source bulk ingredients at the pharmaceutical grade would be very helpful as well.
And I guess maybe just to add to Debbie's question before we continue with public comment, I don't want to interrupt public comment because these are very good information, is that my understanding is that the board is not trying to limit access. It's trying to provide and gain more information because of, it would be very simple to just say that's not our regulation, you can't do it. But the board is extremely mindful of the importance of this product to patients and to their well-being. And so that's why we're taking a very slow, methodical approach to investigating the information. And in fact, we may never come to an action item, but to recognize that there are potential issues that have been brought to us by the FDA.
Okay, and our next request for comment comes from Andrea Ashby. Andrea, your line is unmuted. You will have 2 minutes.
Thank you. I appreciate this opportunity. I'm a family medicine physician. I've been dealing with patients for many years who have MTHFR deficiencies causing anything from depression and ADD to infertility. And my patients have been using these injectables, and it has become progressively more difficult to find pharmacies who are still producing them. And many pharmacists have told me that the FDA has just harassed them to the point that they've given up and quit compounding these substances. And it's just crucial for my patients that these be accessible. And I appreciate the fact that you have not taken an action item. We have seen absolutely no problem with any of the injectable methylcobalamin in any of the patients. And over I hear, oh, this is amazing. I didn't know that this was what normal was. And one of my patients, who's a very famous actress on stage, screen, has Oscars, Emmys, Golden Globes. She says, you know, if I don't get my injection, I can't memorize my lines. And it's so crucial for all of my patients that they be able to access this medication. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate your informative comments and sharing your patients' stories.
Our next request for comment comes from Grace Gardner. Grace, your line is unmuted. You will have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much for allowing me this opportunity. I would like to add my voice to the ones previous to me, urging you, please, please, please don't take this product off the market from 503A pharmacies. The product is very hard to find, especially in the preservative-free version. And about 8 years ago, I was diagnosed with peripheral neuropathy of unknown etiology. In other words, we don't know what causes this. They were willing to put me on 11 pain pills a day. 11 pain pills a day. I have been on methylcobalamin shots for the last 7 years. I am on no pain pills, and I'm even able, ladies, you will appreciate this, I am even able to wear regular shoes with lower heels. I was in rocker bottom sneakers for an entire year because I was in so much pain. And going to professional meetings in those kinds of shoes was very painful to me psychologically. So I would please beg you to think about this decision before you make it. I appreciate the concern, truly, but it has made all the difference in the world to me in terms of pain level and ability to function.
Thank you.
Our next request for comment comes from Doug Holstead. Doug, your line is open. You will have 2 minutes.
Hi, I'm Dr. Doug Holstead. I'm a physician in the Monterey area, and I deal with autistic children and children or people with mixed connective tissue disease and a variety of other issues. So I have about 25 patients on methylcobalamin. As far as I know, the one pharmacy that I had available for me to be able to treat autistic children with methylcobalamin shut down, and I can't get the concentration that I want. I don't know of any others. So I believe that what you all are saying is legal fiction in regards to, oh yeah, all of them are making methylcobalamin. Not in my experience, and please send me the people that are making this stuff because I'd love to get it for my patients. It's highly effective. It really helps with verbiage, also helps calm kids down. There are 49 states where I don't think there's any problem, and I'm in the state where there's really a problem, and I believe it's you. For me, I have an obligation to first do no harm. You guys, as pharmacists or on this board of pharmacy, should also take over that. I'm very concerned that you all don't have the right focus for what you're doing in this nation, in this state. I can't believe that we're at this point. The pharmacy where I was getting methyl B12 for my patients had to shut down because they were afraid of losing their license through you guys. And I'd like an explanation for that. It's not just methylcobalamin. There are other products that I have an extraordinarily difficult time getting in one state, and I'm in that state. And I'm just curious, when did you guys start practicing medicine? Because this is not appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your patient's experiences. I do really appreciate your testimony and your emotion behind it.
Our next request for comment comes from Virginia Osborne. Virginia, your line is open. You will have 2 minutes.
Thank you. I'm Dr. Virginia Osborne. I'm in Northern California, a licensed practitioner for 25 years, and an educator in IV nutrient therapies, both in universities and nationally and internationally. So safety and efficacy has always been a big part. And this particular product has often shown just more benefit than detriment. I haven't heard of any issues through all the years that I've been educating and working with patients. And I have the adult population that depends on this. And it is the variables, as the last speaker said, it's the amount. And if you go to a 503B, then we get a standardized and we don't get the type of product we need for each individual patient. And the other point that I think has been brought up over and over again is the cost. We've watched this go up exponentially and all across the board. And we just, we want our patients to be able to afford this, especially in this day and age with what's happened in our nation and the world in the last year. So with that, I just want to give my comment to that. And I certainly support all that we are doing out there as supporting our patients in the safest and most efficient way possible. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you sharing your testimony with us.
Our next commenter is Ron Mcguff. Ron, your line is open and you will have 2 minutes.
All right, thank you once again. I'd like to finish my previous presentation. This all revolves, I won't say all of it, but most of this revolves around how do you define a pharmaceutical grade raw material that could be used as an injection. And the USP has done that already. They've already have many chapters devoted to how to define this. But the USP does not differentiate between who is using this information. So a manufacturer will use it to get an approval, outsourcing facilities, and certainly compounding pharmacies, 503As. So I would like to say, refute some previous conversation that 503As are certainly capable of creating a pharmaceutical group, not creating the drug, but reviewing a pharmaceutical grade raw material. There's no question of that. This information can be verified by independent FDA registered laboratories. The laboratories can generate reports that the State Board of Pharmacy could use as evidence as to whether a pharmacy is using a pharmaceutical ingredient or not. This is done by testing. Board of Inspectors simply ask for the reports on tests such as what are your limits in elemental impurity, residual solvents, and other things like that. The pharmacy should be able to provide that. So there's no limit or disqualifier that the compounding pharmacy cannot do this. Additionally, there would be no cost to the Board of Pharmacy to ask for this information. The pharmacy should have it on hand, and no cost for the reports generated. So the State Board of Pharmacy can easily review each
10
raw
seconds.
material. And that's what I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next comment comes from Berta Alexander. Berta, your line is open and you will have 2 minutes.
Hi, thank you. I would also like to urge this board to not take action. You heard from my doctor. My son and I both take the preservative-free injectable methylcobalamin, and my doctor, Dr. Ashby, who you heard from earlier, diagnosed us both with hypothyroid, and a couple of the symptoms are low energy levels and brain fog. And this injection has really made a huge difference. It's hard to see my son struggle with energy, and he's so young, my teenager, and it's really difficult to see him. I don't have as dramatic of a story as some of the ones that I've heard already, but it really makes a difference in our lives. It helps us feel normal. And we've been taking it for over 5 years now, no side effects, and it is just so invaluable to us. It is expensive, and it seems like the prices just keeps going up, but we'll do what we have to keep taking it, whatever we can do. So again, I urge you to take no action, and I really appreciate you allowing us to make comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing your personal experience for you and your son.
Our next comment comes from Jill Robinson. Jill, your line is open and you will have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I am a mom of a son who, before the age of 2, was diagnosed with moderate autism. We did every kind of therapy, behavioral, speech, OT, diet, and then at age 5, he still could barely speak, made no attempts at social interaction, had a full-time aide at school, no real eye contact, found a specialist and flew out to Chicago. She looked at his genetic blood panel and said, he is not able to retain B12. I'm like, well, we give it to him orally. She said, no, he needs injections. Because he is very chemically sensitive, like me, he needs preservative-free injections, which I understand you cannot get from a 503B pharmacy. That's my understanding. Anyway, we had the most miraculous story I've ever heard. The day after he started this, my son started speaking in full sentences with full eye contact, started seeking out friends. I had teachers, specialists come to me and go, what did you do? Parents say, what happened to your son? One of the foremost autism specialists, educational specialists in Marin County said, can I send parents to you? What did you do? I'm like, no, it was B12. So my son is now 18. He was elected to leadership in his very large high school. He was a drama star. He got a merit scholarship to a very competitive college that unfortunately he can't attend because of COVID, but he still needs the shots. He needs preservative-free shots. He can now administer them to himself. He needs very few other therapies. And I just, I'm just imploring you to do the right thing and make this available. And if you're worried about arsenic and lead, go look at the rice and the organic kale readings on that, because when those are analyzed, they don't look so good. And my son has been tested for lead.
10 seconds.
And he's clear. So thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you for sharing your powerful story. I really appreciate it.
Our next commenter is Jillian. Jillian, your line is open and you will have 2 minutes.
Yes, thank you. My name is Jillian. In 2012, at 20 months old, my son was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. He was diagnosed with other medical conditions such as the MTHFR mutation. He was homozygous for that. So he had 2 SNPs, one from each of the parents, methylation impairment that disrupts, as others have said, serotonin, dopamine, and other neurotransmitters. He was also diagnosed with mitochondrial dysfunction and other medical conditions. My son was nonverbal until almost 4 years of age. When he started, we started taking a compounded methyl B12 injections. He started slowly making noises, then first sounds of a word, 2 words, and then by the age of 4.5, he was speaking with basic sentences. Compounded methyl B12 greatly improved my son's cognitive awareness, ability to communicate, including speech, and his overall health improved. Alternative B12 does not work the same, nor get the same results. My son he continues to take compounded methyl B12 for about 7 years now, and this is a big factor with his methylation impairment cycle. If my son was not able to continue with the compounded methyl B12 injections, we would lose our son as the boy he is today. He would most likely regress and become low functioning, instead of a curious, humorous, healthy boy who attends a private Waldorf school, has friends, can converse, and has a future. Making compounded B12 injections unavailable or unaffordable, currently we spend about $300 a month for 30 injections. Does not make any sense. My son gets tested yearly for arsenic, lead, just like some of the other parents have stated, and he comes back clean. We owe these children and other people, such
10
as mine with
seconds.
autism, the very best chance for a normal life we can give them. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing your story. It does help us in our thoughts and our discussions.
Our next comment comes from Nancy Fingerhut. Nancy, your line is open and you will have 2 minutes.
Thank you for the opportunity to comment. As indicated in previous board comments, both 503A pharmacies and 503B outsourcing facilities may in fact be receiving the same bulk drug products. So with correct compounding process and facility controls, there would not be a difference in the final drug product other than additional end product testing. So instead of restricting 503As from this practice, we are asking the board to engage 503A pharmacies with additional end product testing recommendations, or at least support us in our endeavor to find the appropriate grade bulk drug substance. I also want to repeat, both manufacturers and wholesalers both test the drug product for acceptable levels of contaminants. So ungraded does not unequivocally equal unsafe. And in closing, I want to state that our pharmacy has dispensed this drug as a sterile compound for over 15 years without any safety complaints.
Thank you.
Our next request for comment comes from Peter. Peter, your line is open and you will have 2 minutes.
Hi, thank you very much. My name is Peter Koshland. I have a compounding pharmacy in California. I just wanted to kind of outline the way I see it. Well, first of all, I'll say that when we had our sterile inspection earlier this year, we were issued a citation for compounding B12. It was a total shock and surprise because we have been compounding it for years and have had that been looked at by our inspector. What was also interesting about
I'm sorry. I think I need some board clarification about testimony regarding an ongoing investigation.
Oh, I'm
Is
sorry.
that appropriate?
Is this an ongoing investigation?
I'm not familiar with what he's talking about, but typically we don't have that.
I'll move on. I didn't mean to step into that if that's not appropriate. What I wanted to really talk about is just the situation as it stands. Right now, we agree that we need a safe supply. In fact, I wasn't aware of the concerns of the board about contaminants and heavy metals, et cetera, until I had contact with inspectors around this, and certainly would want to address those and address any concerns that the inspector had, et cetera. It was suggested that we send our patients to 503B pharmacy as an alternative. When we did some research, we found only one pharmacy out of the 29 actually supplied B12. It was a non-resident outsourcing facility that only supplied it in a couple of strengths. They were labeled for office use only, and they were not preservative free, as many of our patients needed. So I understand the thinking around finding a more appropriate supply that is guaranteed safe and has been tested. That being said, the reality on the ground is, as the inspectors are taking 503A pharmacies' ability to compound this away, the supply is just drying up. There is nobody picking up the pieces and providing this to people. So as you've heard in many of these other testimonials, it's just becoming unavailable with the potential for great harm for patients. And we had some very, very difficult phone calls with our patients telling them we couldn't do it with tears on the other end, which was really devastating for me, because I want to be able to provide that care at the highest safety and ethical standards. And I just didn't have any answers for them. So I really agree with some of the other comments. If the concerns are heavy metals or other contaminants, I am more than willing to do that testing to address any concerns the board has, to make sure that what the raw materials are appropriate or find sources that are acceptable to the board. I want to be able to address those concerns and continue to provide this to our patients. And I think there's a way to do that.
Thank you.
And at this point, this will be our last request for comment, unless any more come in. This comment comes from, I apologize in advance for your name, Adamola Are. Your line is open and you'll have 2 minutes.
You did a fantastic job pronouncing my name, by the way, so thank you. On behalf of the National Community Pharmacists Association, we'd like to just emphasize to the board the need to maintain appropriate patient-specific compounded methylcobalamin through 503 pharmacies licensed in the state of California. I mean, we do appreciate the board's vigilance in pursuit of safety, yet we urge the board to be judicious in any decision they make as to not make an error in judgment and establish an unsettling precedent for the rest of the country to follow with this. As we've heard from everybody else, costs are rising, patients already have limited access, and patient care is already being disrupted. And if just putting all that aside, patient cost, patient convenience, if the board isn't really concerned about that and is focused on safety alone, the board should ask, is this concern based on credible evidence? What are the facts out there? Or is this based on rare bad actors? Have there been situations out there enough situations out there where the board can point to that this needs to be done? Or are these just markers of speculation? Just want to emphasize that the board, the state of California has hundreds of 503A pharmacies that the board can work with to ensure a safe product for Californians and not limit supply to just outsourcing facilities that don't have that local connection with their community members at the local level and have been providing this service for years, as you all have heard. So thank you for allowing me to provide these comments.
Thank you.
And with that, that's our last request for comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, thank you.
It is closed.
First of all, I wanted to thank everyone who provided testimony, examples, and information to the board. It is very helpful and helps to solidify our previous discussions. As previously stated, the reason we're discussing this is from a patient safety point of view, but also the extreme importance to balance product access with patient safety also. And that's a difficult balance sometimes. And in this situation, you can see that it is a challenging discussion. So if I may, before we go back to board members for next steps, I would like to provide a suggestion. I think that moving forward, we should continue what our current process is that we've discussed in previous meetings. I think there's a lot of really great information and emerging concepts about future opportunities for maybe having some sort of pharmaceutical grade or adding testing to compounding. All of these things are probably really great to continue to talk about. But in the meantime, I don't foresee us having any action items per se. And that's very similar to what we've talked about in our previous meetings. I think that we should continue to instruct staff to focus on educating the licensees when the practice is identified and to exercise appropriate discretion. Since this is an area that's probably going to be changing, I would also like to ask the staff to continue to review both legal information and FDA information, and to keep us informed if the situation were to change or if additional information is available. So board members, that's my comments. Do you have additional comments, or does someone want to make a motion?
I'd like to make a comment, Maria. This is Albert.
Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I really love to hear all those speakers giving our board member a feedback of their experience and opinion. They shouldn't have to feel the pain in order to speak up to us. I wish, there are more pharmacists or the public participate more in our board meeting and give us their experience and feedback. And I really enjoy this meeting and experience. All this time I've been serving the board, I never heard that many speakers participate. So I really enjoy that and happy to see that. I wish more pharmacists come to our board meeting and speak up on all those different subjects. Thank you.
Thank you.
Maria, this is Debbie. I'd like to make a comment. I agree with what Albert just said, but I also feel like, and maybe this is going to make people cringe, but I feel like we need to provide a little bit of direction here, because it sounds like we've created a situation where it sounds like some pharmacies have actually stop making this or compounding this product, and it could be detrimental to the consumers in California. We're all for the consumers in California. We just have to make sure that what we're doing doesn't cause problems. So I guess I'm a little bit hesitant just kind of moving forward without providing some additional direction to the staff.
And maybe Christine or Anne could speak to that. I think one of the challenges is the board cannot publicly speak saying that we are disregarding or encouraging disregarding current regulations. But what we can do is exercise discretion. So maybe Christine or Anne could explain that a little bit better, because I don't think we're going to be able to come up with a FAQ or a policy statement.
Yeah, this is Anne. I think that it would be helpful for us to be able to kind of speak with counsel a little bit to see where to go. I agree that enforcement discretion is one way to get to it, but would like the opportunity, if members are agreeable, for us to work with counsel offline and see where or if there is some additional flexibilities.
Sounds good to me.
I guess my only concern is how long will that take? Because it sounds like we have, it seems like this has been dragging on. Just kind of looking at the minutes and the comments and and even in the materials that were in our packet. So, so it feels like we need to bring this maybe to some sort of conclusion. I understand what you're saying at the same time, but I don't know. Seems that
I think that some of the challenge, Debbie, is, right, one, we're not the only regulator in the space, right? And we don't, we have that constraint a little bit. And then, how, not only how the other regulators handle it, but then also items and actions taken by the FDA. So I don't know that it's as, we're not necessarily in a vacuum here. The other thing that I would maybe suggest is if there's concern that, we don't want to wait until April, which I think is when the next meeting is, I think the committee could look at whether or not they wanted to schedule a meeting in advance of that. That would be another option that would still allow staff to work with both council and other regulators, and then maybe come back with some different options.
Well, your suggestion, as I understand it, isn't going to take any time. You're going to be talking with counsel and come back with something, right, to us?
Well, that's not new, though. There's, I think, ongoing discussions, not only with counsel, but also with the FDA. But I think what Ann's talking to is discussing with counsel what kind of communications or Board of Pharmacy statements can be done. Is that what you're saying, Ann?
And that's not something that's going to take any amount of time. I mean, you're not going to wait for 6 weeks to talk to them. So, Ann, right?
I think that this is hard to say, so I'm apologizing. I think that there are other regulators in the space that we never want to set up licensees to fail. And we need to be cautious if we're putting something out that others disagree with, that there could potentially be consequences in that there's conflicting information coming from different regulators. So at minimum, I think that we need to recognize and acknowledge that there are others in the space and that they may be coming at it differently. And we at least need to, if we're going to issue some kinds of guidances, flexibilities, whatever you want to call it, that people have their eyes wide open as to what that could or could not be.
Okay, so how much time would you estimate it would take to get to that point?
Well, I think this needs to be really thoughtfully considered by legal and office staff, because it also may rise, because the FDA is involved, it may rise to the needing to go through DCA counsel. And, I'm not sure if this would even rise to the level of the governor's office or what, there's ramifications on any comment, a la marijuana, that's a very similar issue where there were lots of different comments and different regulators.
Ann, this is Albert. Is there any reported incident or harm or side effect of this product
that we are aware of?
Yeah. Is there any reported?
So, Albert, I would say that there's, yes, here's what I would say is that the FDA has been issuing findings in this area. There's a sample of one in the report. With respect to consumer harm specifically, we don't necessarily have access to like MedWatch and those kinds of things. So I don't know that we would necessarily know.
Okay, thanks.
And do we know why multiple people that testified said that we're the only state that's an issue? Why has the FDA or why has no one else? And I know I'm asking a question probably you don't know the answer to, but I mean, do you have any thoughts?
We don't know, what the FDA's communication to other boards of pharmacy. What I can, sorry for answering for Ann, but what Ann has told me and others have told me is the FDA brings their investigations to every state board when it comes up, and our state has received copies of those investigations.
Got it. Okay.
And the only other thing that I would say is, so many
other states. The assumption is
today are related because we also, if the board enters into an MOU, what does that look like for this kind of a product, right? I feel like it's a multifaceted issue.
Mm-hmm. So I think the best thing, I'm really a little concerned about having another board meeting separate from our current schedule, which is just looking at providing public information. So I think it's a very tenuous location that we are in. And I think the only thing I would suggest is we kind of stand pat and that we don't change our process of having the staff focusing on education of licensees. And that's typically one-on-one. So that's the issue, is that there's not a news press release or an article and script, or we can't do those kinds of things in this very difficult multi-level regulatory space. So board members,
So what do you,
if the staff has information in a month, would you want us to have another meeting, or can this wait until April?
well, first, what do you see that education to be? Are we
Well, I'm
going
not sure we're going to be able to do it.
I mean, are we educating them to tell them that they can't use it? Is that the education, or what is the education?
I think that's the crux of the issue, is we may not even be able to provide any written or formal documentation instructing people to that we have discretion. We don't have the authority to not enforce regulations.
No, I understand that.
I think, Greg, we don't know what we're going to be able to say to them. I think, it's like Maria says, it's a very thoughtful process we need to go through. However, I'm a little bit worried that the next time we meet is April 29th, the day before our board meeting on April 30th. And, we can't do anything. We can only recommend to the full board what we should do. So
right.
I guess even if it's a short meeting, I feel like, a couple of, like you said, Maria, there's like 3 of these things that are all kind of intertwined here. It feels like even if we have a short meeting and kind of touch on all 3 of these, that might be prudent. And then on the 29th, either we're kind of getting ready for the 30th to recommend to the board, or, we're ready to recommend something to the board. I'm a little bit worried waiting until April 29th to kind of pound through this all again. That's my thought.
I would agree with that.
Okay. So Anne, we'll take your recommendation, and as soon as you feel you have enough information, we could do a short board meeting. I don't want to add this to our white bagging discussion, so I would have that be a separate issue.
That makes sense.
Okay. Board members, do you feel comfortable that we have discussed this agenda item and can move forward?
Yes.
Yep.
Great, thank you. In lieu of taking, thank you. In lieu of taking a break, we only have a couple more items to do, so we're going to move ahead, and it shouldn't take that long.
Okay.
Item number 12, review and discussion of enforcement statistics. Attachment 8 includes the enforcement statistics for the first 6 months of the year, starting in July. Members, do you have any questions or comments regarding the enforcement statistics?
Nope.
No.
And we don't take public, do we take public comment on enforcement statistics? I don't have that written down.
I think we do.
Because it's on the agenda, I would encourage it.
Okay,
Yeah.
Let's open the public comment.
This is the moderator. We have opened the Q&A panel for requests for public comment. If you'd like to make a public comment on enforcement statistics, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen, type "I would like to make a comment" into the ask field, and submit that to all panelists. And we will pause for just a moment.
Okay, I don't see any public comment. Thank you.
You're welcome. I will close the panel.
And we'll move on to our last agenda item, which is future committee meeting dates. As stated earlier, our next full committee meeting is on April 29th. Separate from that meeting, we are also scheduling an informational hearing on white bagging. The proposed dates for this hearing are either February 18th or March 4th. Information will be released closer to the meeting date, and we have several presentations planned. It should be very informative and educational. For members of the public, please contact our executive officer if you're interested in being a part of the presentation on the white bag informational meeting. So in addition, it sounds like we will have a short other meeting before April to follow up on our discussions on methylcobalamin. Thank you. Thank you. Any other comments? If not, thank you all for your time. And this has been a long day with, I think, some very fruitful discussions. I appreciate all the public comment and all the members' attention. Thank you.
Great job.
Maria.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good
Great
job,
job,
Maria.
Maria.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. I think we were very successful. Have a good rest of the day.
You
Yeah.
too. Thank you.
Bye-bye.